I am not a former football player, was not a high school star. I was always on the debate team. And so going to law school, it was never really a dream to represent a football coach because they were terrifying. And I'll tell you, Bill, it remained terrifying for me. The intensity of these individuals who live their life in that kind of intense world and then come into a courtroom where things take years is a bit jarring.
The following is a presentation of Hobson Media. Woohoo!
Who's got it better than us?
This is the Church Pew Sports Podcast, featuring a group of pastors delivering bombastic takes on sports, life, and faith.
We're going to attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Take a knee.
Man, it's hard to break us now. It's hard to break us. As a matter of fact, you ain't going to do it.
Lend an ear.
These are some of the best questions I've had. I have to tell you that straight up.
As the Church Pew Sports Podcast begins.
We were all supposed to be here together, man. We're destined for this. Just stay the course.
Give each other a high five.
Hello, friends, and welcome into another episode of Church Pew Sports, where we talk sports and life and faith. And on this really kind of special episode, we're going to dive into the legal realm a little bit. Paul Miller, it's good to have you with us. We'll introduce the rest of our panel here in just a couple of moments, but this is a little bit of a different pathway for us that we're about to take.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it, Bill. I mean, the backstory here is that Randy Gilmer, he's a good friend of ours, lives out in Nevada, and we kind of jokingly refer to him as the chief legal counsel of Church Pew Sports because he's a lawyer. He's a pretty high-powered lawyer in the state of Nevada. And we were talking about the Jon Gruden lawsuit against the NFL because the Nevada Supreme Court just made a ruling related to the case.
Which, by the way, there's a lot of sports fans listening right now who have zero idea, because it's been 4 years so far,
right,
that there is a lawsuit by Jon Gruden against the National Football League. And so we will kind of help lay down the framework for that here in the moments ahead. It's a very intriguing concept. An individual who believes he was wronged, taking on, I think, certainly in America, the most powerful sports league. I don't know if it's the most powerful on the planet, but the NFL is the 60-ton gorilla in the room.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so fascinated to see where this thing goes and where the conversation goes. So I'm looking forward to it. Randy knows Jon Gruden's lawyer, and we're going to have him on the show tonight. It's going to be a blast.
So by way of introduction, just remember this, folks. This is a very legalese heavy conversation that you're about to hear. I think it's going to be fantastic, but we want you to hang with it. We'll try to make sense out of it at the far end of it, because there's a lot of moving parts in here. Our panel on this episode of Church Pew Sports includes Randy Gilmer, that Paul has mentioned a couple of times. He is a Assistant Attorney General in the state of Nevada and has a direct connection to the guest that you'll meet here in the next couple of moments. His son, Josh Gilmer, is joining us, and really glad to have David Collins with us again. So we get this cryptic text from Randy, and it says, would you guys ever want to have the attorney for Jon Gruden on the podcast? It was kind of like a weird, I mean, like, is this a typo? What was he talking about? Why would this ever be on his radar? I forget that he's out in Nevada, and that Jon Gruden, when he last coached in the NFL, was coaching the Raiders. So that was in Vegas. And there was a very bizarre ending to that chapter in coaching history with how all that came down. So we're going to kind of focus on that on this episode of the program. And David Collins, let me bring you in first and foremost, because if I say to you the name Jon Gruden, what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
Honestly, a lot of people would say Chucky. You know, he's got the Chucky face, but he's obviously been a relatively legendary coach for a lot of years. So this whole situation is fascinating because obviously it starts with the racist emails and different things that came out apparently. But to find out that it might be actually a part of something a little bit bigger than that is really interesting. So I'm glad we got Adam on to talk about it.
I am too. And for those of you anywhere who have any fandom or connection whatsoever to the National Football League, I think this story will be of great interest to you because it has the potential for its tentacles to reach all the way into Park Avenue, where the world headquarters are of the league. And I guess I don't really know where we're going to go from here, but we have lots of questions for our special guest, Paul.
Yeah, I know what the first question needs to be, Bill. Adam, it's great to have you on. And that's great that you're a lawyer and everything else, but you don't get to avoid the hazing ritual that we put all first-time guests on the podcast through. So here's how this works. It's really just one really simple question, just so our listeners can get to know you at least a little bit. What are your irrational sports loyalties? Like, we just want to know, who are the teams that you follow? What's any sport, any level, but you follow them with a fanaticism that makes your friends and maybe family go, yeah, you just need to dial it down a little bit. So who would be your irrational sports loyalties?
Except Adam's going to have to unmute himself for us to all hear his answer.
There we go.
A little too cautious. I was going to say, in true lawyer fashion, Paul, I won't answer your question directly. And I'll start with my rational sports loyalty, and that's Duke basketball. I went there in undergrad, like Josh did, and it's a place that just gets in your heart, and the team becomes part of you, like your school. And so that's something that is as rational to me as anything I learned in school. My irrational sports loyalty is to Liverpool Football Club. When I was going to law school in Boston, it just so happened there was a bar near me that happened to be a place to drink early in the morning, where there were a bunch of Liverpool fans from England, and no connection with Liverpool, had never been there, didn't know the first thing about Premier League soccer. But that became something where now I think I can name every player, every transfer rumor for the past 20 years. And I'm obsessed with watching every game there. So that's definitely the irrational one.
That's awesome. So you would be a supporter. If you're irrational, you would not be a fan. You would be a supporter of British football. Yeah.
Supporter then.
Yeah.
Great.
That's Randy, good. My kid's a Chelsea fan, so we can go at it a little bit, maybe.
Randy, let me give you the floor for a moment to officially introduce our guest and run down all of the credentials that you've got memorized, and then we'll get into the Gruden matter.
Sure. So first off, Bill was very kind at the beginning. It was a little bit of evangelistic speaking, because I think they saw the Supreme Court case that came down 7-0 and said something, joked with me about coming on. And I'm like, well, I can come on, but I actually know the attorney. So they don't think they were expecting that. But we did reach out to Adam. So Adam Hossmer-Henner is a attorney here in Nevada, with his home base in Reno. But the firm he works for, however, has offices in both Reno and Las Vegas, and probably other cities too that I'm forgetting. But he is currently representing Jon Gruden, and I'll be the bad guy lawyer and say, first off, there are many things that as lawyers we would love to say or maybe not say about cases. But the nice thing is we always have these nice little ethical rules that we can hide behind, because sometimes whether we want to talk or we can't talk, we can't. So with people asking questions here, they may or may not know what those things are that Adam can answer. So just up front, know that's possible, that Adam might have to do that from time to time, because we have to speak in very general terms. But I first met Adam probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, most likely. With my job with the state of Nevada, one of the things, the first time I met Adam was actually, he was a volunteer mediator in a mediator program as an attorney that helped mediate cases that for my client, which is the Department of Corrections, and offenders that are housed with the Department of Corrections. Adam volunteered his time and gave pro bono time to help mediate those cases as part of settlements. And so that's how I first got to know Adam. And then in good fashion, like the way politics used to be and the law, and unfortunately the legal community can or cannot be like this, but we found ourselves on the opposite side of the V, as we like to say in some cases. And he represented some offenders in a class action lawsuit that we can talk about because it's completely over, and it was a good result. One of those things where justice was done, and it was to get treatment for all hepatitis C offenders that were housed in the Department of Corrections. And so we got to know each other very well during that process. And then when Josh was getting ready to go to Duke, I did not know that Adam went to Duke, but he heard that. And so then he got to reach out and helped us with that transition for Josh. So that's a little bit about how we know Adam. And he is a very humble guy and great guy to know as a friend. But he is a great legal scholar in mind. And he, as I mentioned, went to Duke for undergrad, and he went to school back east for law school, place on a river, near Boston, back in Cambridge. I think I got that right. I think that's how you guys always give the disclaimers, Adam, when you talk about that school in Massachusetts, Harvard University for law school. So
the Michigan of the East.
The Michigan of the East. That's right. I forgot that one. So that's a little bit about Adam. And with that, I'll turn it over to him. And Adam Hossmer-Henner, everybody, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And well, there's the Tommy Amaker connection between Michigan and Harvard. So at least there's something there. And Duke too, I think.
Right.
But just real quick at the outset, I haven't met you all. Thank you so much for having me on. We just have kind of a disclaimer that, nothing that we say here today kind of relates to your podcast, either for me or Mr. Gruden. And I speak only kind of for myself as the counsel for Mr. Gruden. But it's great to be here. It has been an amazing case since 2021, and happy to talk through it with you all to the extent I can, because it certainly has been of interest, not just kind of to the sports world, but to the legal community as well, and certainly at that intersection to sports lawyers. It has created issues that have resonated throughout all the sports leagues in the past 4 years, and certainly culminating with the Nevada Supreme Court's decision in the past. Well, there are 2 decisions in the past 2 months.
So we'll dive into it here. Let me first ask Josh Gilmer if you can verify the things your dad has said, because sometimes you know how dads can kind of get a little overzealous in their introductions and exaggerate credentials and things like that. Are you willing to stand behind Adam and the things that your dad has put out there as a fellow Dookie?
I'd say so. I think the only thing that I've had a problem with so far was actually something Adam said when he said he was the second best in Nevada, because I don't think that's quite right, but
oh man,
wow,
that's a lot of tuition money that you just forgot about, mister.
Only one of them went to Duke, so that's all you got to say.
Nice.
I will just jump in and say something that I have to say about Randy, which is, we've been against each other in these pro bono cases a lot, and in the legal community, and in sports too. But all you really want is for someone to be on the other side, no matter where you're positioned, and behave in the same way that you would want to. And Randy is someone that I would aspire to be, in those cases. You just want to make the arguments, regardless of who your client is, that the other side would make in the way they make them, and then the justice falls how it may. And so that's the great thing about being in the legal community, is you get to work with people who are defending their client just like you're defending yours. And if the roles were reversed, you'd have the same relationship that you would get to enjoy.
That's good. I'm glad you said that. So let me do this, Adam. Let me give you my amateurish sports fan, million miles removed from all of this understanding of what I think transpired. And then you can dive in, tell me that I have missed it by 180 degrees, or maybe I'm at least on the right boat, but I'm on the wrong side of that boat. And then we'll start to fire questions at you. My understanding is that in 2021, when the Raiders released their coach, they did so because they came into knowledge, they had possession of some emails from him that contained some language and some statements that were very, very unpopular, very politically incorrect. And so they canned him. And the question that came up after that is, well, that's interesting. How would anybody have gotten a hold of these communications unless it was leaked from perhaps the offices of the league, because there's no other place that these would have existed? And so, again, still my amateurish understanding of it all. And so at some point, Coach Gruden decided, I deserve my day in court. This is not right. This should not have happened. Filed a lawsuit against the National Football League. And the league recently challenged the merits of that lawsuit to the Nevada Supreme Court, and they got pounded, shut out. I think would you say 7-0, or it was unanimous, whatever the number of justices is, that this case can proceed. which I think means that at some point, somebody's going to have to cough up some information that could be fairly embarrassing and perhaps damaging to the NFL. That's my understanding. How did I do, Professor?
Pretty well. We are not in discovery yet, so we're not in the stage of verifying facts. We're kind of in the stage of the allegations that were made in our complaint, and so a few things to kind of add and correct there. The first, I think, is the complaint alleges that the emails were obtained as part of the investigation into Daniel Snyder and the Commanders football team, and then those emails were part of a trove of, according to our complaint, hundreds of thousands of emails, and then only a few got leaked to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And the complaint also alleges that the NFL, at the latest, had access to those emails in June 2021, and they weren't released to the media until October 2021, after the football season had already started. So that's kind of the one interesting timing thing that's in the complaint that hasn't necessarily been explained by the NFL, in terms of these emails being collected as part of that investigation, and then they haven't explained how they came out of that investigation and those supposedly confidential sets of documents from that investigation to then the media.
So all of the Gruden issue is a byproduct of the Snyder issue?
And possibly. In fact, one of the news articles that we cite in the complaint specifically refers to Gruden as collateral damage of the Snyder investigation, in the sense that the emails never would have been collected, centralized, according to that article, unless the investigation of Snyder had been conducted in the way that they did. And going back to that investigation, some of the reporting on this is really interesting, and this is not something obviously I have firsthand knowledge of, but it was one of those situations where the NFL was intending to do the full outside investigation of Daniel Snyder. And then, unlike all the other reports where they hired someone to do like Deflategate, a full investigative report and then make it public, they then took the rest of the investigation in-house and then never released the report on the Daniel Snyder investigation. So that was a change in process, certainly of note, and a lot of questions were raised at the time. But as it relates to our lawsuit, those emails then were centralized according to our complaint and then not released until October 2021, after the Raiders had already played 4 games.
Okay, so David, I'm seeing you nod your head a few moments here while Adam's explaining things. What's going through your mind as you hear the Snyder connection to all of it?
Well, yeah, I had 2 questions. Hopefully they're quick. But the first one was, I believe one of the wins in your lawsuit in this situation was about arbitration. Was the NFL actually arguing that they should be in charge of this whole investigation? And when you won that, in the court system, it's just, they're just trying to maintain some level of control over the situation, correct? And is this something that you've noticed, and maybe you can't answer this, that they've done before?
Well, we have been in the dispute over whether the complaint is arbitrable since 2021. So our complaint was filed in November 2021, and the NFL filed 2 motions. The first is a motion to dismiss, saying that we couldn't state a claim legally, and the court denied that in district court. Then at the same time, they filed a motion to compel arbitration, which meant, according to the NFL Constitution, their argument was that Commissioner Goodell himself would be the one to arbitrate the dispute. Now, it may not necessarily be him. Their argument was, even if it's not Commissioner Goodell, he could nominate someone and select the arbitrator to choose the ultimate one to resolve the dispute. And our argument in response, as we've said in maybe 14 briefs by this point, is, hey, we're suing him. He doesn't get to be the one who either serves as the judge or chooses the judge in a complaint and claims against Commissioner Goodell. And that's what the Nevada Supreme Court ultimately resolved after years of briefing and appellate practice. In a 5-2 decision, they found that arbitration clause would be unconscionable, substantively and procedurally, and so invalidated it. And so they're sending our case back down to the district court unless, by October 23rd, unless the NFL seeks certiorari from the United States Supreme Court.
Okay, so I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, was they were literally trying to put it in a situation where either Goodell or somebody he appointed was going to be the one in charge of ultimately making the decision, which of course would side with the NFL and their interests. So I guess I find it fascinating. Obviously, you can't assume guilt, but it's one of those situations where you look at it and go, if they're so unwilling to actually have this heard out in a regular court system, then and obviously you can't speculate on this, but someone like me would look at that and say that seems a little bit fishy. And I guess the other question I would ask is, along with the Daniel Snyder thing and Bruce Allen and everybody else that was involved in that email situation, is there any potential repercussions from anything that they did in the past, or do you not have any say on Daniel Snyder, Bruce Allen, the other people that were involved in this situation?
With respect to the latter, it doesn't. That's not involved in our lawsuit at all.
Yours is just specifically focused on the Gruden. Okay.
Correct. As far as I know, the internal league investigation into Daniel Snyder is over, and certainly after he sold the team, I'm not aware of any proceedings that are continuing after he left NFL ownership. Certainly, it may relate, as alleged in our complaint, that there is some overlap, but I'm not aware of any kind of separate arbitration or internal proceeding involving the NFL and Snyder. And the first question about arbitration, I mean, yes, that's exactly what the NFL has been attempting to do. And as recently as this last month, they are seeking to compel the arbitration clause in the NFL Constitution and to require us to file our case as a dispute before the NFL arbitration process, whatever that may be. I would push back a little bit, Mr. Collins, and say that it's not unusual for parties to move to compel a case to arbitration, and I don't think that necessarily says anything with respect to guilt one way or the other, but I think it certainly says a lot in terms of the control the NFL wants to have over this arbitration, and indeed any corporation. If you could resolve a matter in-house, versus having it go to court, that choice is a strategic one. And I think the court found that you can't in every single circumstance attempt to resolve it in-house under your own rules.
They wanted to make it an NFL issue, not a legal issue, essentially.
Correct. Mostly, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick and say something that Adam probably wouldn't say here too. And like you said, this isn't necessarily to there's lots of reasons why people might want to participate in arbitration as opposed to go to court without trying to hide things or put things under the rug. One reason is, if you have arbitration, it's generally a much quicker process. I mean, because if you're bound to go through arbitration, you get to pick the arbitrator. And if it's an actual fair and balanced approach where you have arbitrators that are not the people you're suing, as alleged here, you have arbitrators that come together, it goes quicker, it's much quicker, it's a done process, you don't have appeals. And so there's lots of reasons why in the business community people would like to go that route. And it's also a more confidential process. And again, not that there's anything inherently wrong with having stuff confidential, but just the way courts work, there's things that are come out that you might not, it just can be embarrassing or stuff, you just don't want out there personally. So it's not that arbitration is in itself inherently bad, as Adam was trying to get across there.
Yeah, so let me ask a follow-up question on that, and I'm going to betray my ignorance right here. Maybe I get all my information off of like X and other social media channels, but I hear that, okay, the NFL wants this to go to arbitration because they want to avoid discovery. So I would love for Randy or Adam, for one of you to assume for a minute that I don't understand what discovery means and it just explain the process. That would be super helpful for me. And I think other people that are going to be listening to this conversation.
Adam, do you feel comfortable answering that one, or you want me to give the first start?
Well, I certainly can answer it. Not that I'm a law professor yet, but the discovery process is really about finding information that is relevant and proportional to the needs of your case in order to put on the evidence that you need to prove or disprove claims in the case. So at a fundamental level, it includes written requests for documents, written requests for the other party to admit certain facts, and written requests for the party to answer certain questions. It also involves depositions, where you ask a party under oath to answer your questions in an informal proceeding before you get to trial. And there are third-party subpoenas and any number of other discovery techniques, but it's really a truth-finding process to allow the parties to say, hey, we know most of the case, we know some of the case, we've been able to survive to the point where we've stated a legal claim, but what we need is the court's approval and authorization for us to finish the discovery process in order to figure out the rest of what happened. And in this case, one of the points of disagreement has been what is the discovery process in the NFL Constitution? And it doesn't provide for discovery, at least in terms of what I've seen the NFL argue. So they could allow it, they could not allow it, but that's kind of a Schrodinger's cat that we're not sure of until you get into the arbitration process. So arbitration usually allows for discovery, and in other NFL arbitrations, I believe some discovery has been permitted. But one of the important characteristics is that in most arbitrations, it doesn't become public. And so whereas when you have a discovery in the legal process, parties can engage in sign protective orders, seek confidentiality over documents, but the general presumption is that the documents and information become public. In the arbitration process, the presumption's the opposite, and that everything stays private.
That's super helpful.
So Josh Gilmer has a brother named Jeremiah. And at some point growing up, I'm sure Josh and Jeremiah got into some disputes. Somebody took too many cookies or broke the toy or did the thing. And I'm going to guess that more often than not, Josh, you were the guilty party in all of this. How fun would it have been for you if you had just been able to choose who would hear this matter and render a decision on it, as opposed to Jeremiah instantly going to mom and dad? Would it have been, I don't know, maybe more in your favor if you'd have been able to just pick somebody that was a close personal friend of yours and say, hey, why don't you decide this one for us? We'll go into arbitration and I've chosen you.
Well, I think you already kind of touched on it a little bit, that usually Jeremiah, as the guilty party, was able to pick his arbitrator that obviously never chose the side of true justice, which happened to fall on my parents. So that's how that goes. Yes.
So as a young college student, newlywed, and somebody who's a fan of sports in general, does all of this that we're talking about, does this matter to you and your generation? Do you care about how the league handles its business behind the scenes? Do you have I don't know if concern's the right word, but do you have an interest in things like what happens in the Gruden case and how Goodell continues to act like a member of the Corleone family from time to time?
Well, after watching that Lions Chiefs game, I just want to know more and more about how scripted it really is. So
yes, full discovery.
That's what I got.
Okay, so Adam, let's back up and go big picture and just kind of talk about when you first met Coach Gruden, right? So this is, I'm guessing you guys haven't had a lifelong friendship and, used to golf together and have dinner together. This is a legal case, and at some point he sought legal counsel. How did you guys first meet, and can you remember your first impression of this guy who's known for his passion and his fire, and how you handle that as an attorney versus potentially a fan or a non-fan? Does it matter to you if this guy is a Super Bowl winning coach with a very well-known pedigree, or if it's somebody off the street with a similar situation?
So I've actually been extremely fortunate to represent multiple Super Bowl winning coaches. And so
really?
I have an amazing group of clients and just tremendously successful and talented people that, as an attorney, one of the great things is you get to learn from them and see their experiences and the ways they got to be successful. And he's one of just an amazing group of clients that teaches you, a lot about what their industry is and how they live their lives and have become so successful. I am not a former football player, was not a high school star. I was always on the debate team. And so going to law school, it was never really a dream to represent a football coach because they were terrifying. And I'll tell you, Bill, it remained terrifying for me. And so the intensity of these individuals who live their life in that kind of intense world and then come into a courtroom where things take years is a bit jarring. And then what I'll say is, like, when he's around you, the energy that you feel, like he just grabs your arm and tells you to introduce yourself to people. Like I felt like I was still in high school, responding to a coach and just ready to run through a wall for him. It's intense. And he really, he really wanted to win and really wanted to present his case to the court. And so my first experience really was just being told what to do by this person I had just met, who had more energy packed in that human form than I think very, very few people that I've ever met.
Is he approaching this from, and this may, I hope this doesn't take you into a question area that you're not able to answer. In the end, what is Coach Gruden hoping to get out of this? I'm assuming there's a sizable amount, financial amount that he would like the league to write him a check for what would be the lost wages that have kept him out of coaching. Or is it more of a, I just want to be vindicated. This is an injustice and I want to be vindicated for it. How do you assess what the end game is? What looks like a W to a coach that's used to getting W's?
So I don't know. I don't want to speculate as to what he's seeking, and certainly can't reveal kind of anything he's told me. But from his public statements, one of the things that he said over and over again has been that he wants the truth to come out, and he doesn't want other people to have been treated the way he was treated. And so from what he said publicly is just, it's not just about him. It's about creating a playing field that's fair for everyone so that people get treated according to your actions and not your words. And for him, it's making sure that, he feels like tarnished in the public. What he said is there was kind of a hit job against him, and he feels like his reputation was tarnished, and he wanted the opportunity to vindicate that in a public forum. So beyond what he said publicly, I don't think I can say anything else, but that's certainly what I've read him say publicly to the media.
And so each step along this journey, as the league tries to get this thing to go away, right? They're trying to get to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court won't let it go away. I don't think any of us would sit here shocked if they tried to take it to the United States Supreme Court. The league is a powerful behemoth. It is not easily slowed down. And yet, to this point, things have been going in your favor. If this thing called discovery were to happen, is it accurate for us sports fans to think that at some point we're going to see published all of the emails that have been suppressed to this point? Is that the part of discovery that the league least wants to have happen?
I can't speculate on what the league's position with respect to discovery is, or what documents we haven't seen are going to say. But at this stage, I'll say we're not the only ones who are engaging in this dispute with the league, and we're not the only ones who have won recently. There was the former coach of the Dolphins, Flores, who won before the Second Circuit, which is the federal court of appeals, the level right below the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Second Circuit issued a pretty scathing opinion of the NFL and their attempts to compel his case to arbitration, and ruled similar to what the Nevada Supreme Court ruled in our case. And there, again, like the Second Circuit is a very significant court. Just for your listeners, it is, coming out of Southern District in New York and all the New York jurisprudence, it's a pretty influential court. And what they held was that the attempt by the NFL to bind Flores to that arbitration agreement, they said it provided for arbitration in name only, because compelling him to submit his claims against the principal executive, Commissioner Goodell, who was in charge of the parties he was suing, the adverse parties, provided no real opportunity to vindicate his claim. And it wasn't just a choice of a forum, it really was a choice of an outcome. So the Second Circuit rejected on that basis. The other thing the Second Circuit did that was interesting was they talked about the NFL Constitution and the arbitration procedures that were set up there. And they held that the arbitration provision in the NFL Constitution fails to bear even a passing resemblance to traditional arbitral practice, contractually provides for no independent arbitral forum, no bilateral dispute resolution, and no procedure. It offends basic presumptions of our arbitration jurisprudence by submitting Flores' statutory claims to the unilateral, substantive, and procedural discretion of Commissioner Goodell. So it couldn't have been clearer in that case that the Second Circuit didn't deem what the NFL was trying to do as an actual attempt to resolve the dispute according to efficient arbitral mechanisms. It was trying to exert so much control that they felt it was depriving Flores of his opportunity to actually pursue his claims for racial discrimination against the league.
Okay, Adam, I got a follow-up question on that. And I think this is just a sports fan question. So the NFL arbitration rules or whatever, do you know how they compare to like the other major pro sports leagues? Are they more stringent? Are they more advantageous to the guys in charge, that kind of thing? Or does that not matter for this conversation?
I don't think I can say specifically whether one league has a more or less strict arbitration process. Baseball, for example, has a very strict salary arbitration process. And so that baseball arbitration is really binding and tight, and very little ability to move beyond that. But there just aren't that many claims where a party tries to engage in conduct allegedly outside of the internal process of the league and then still try to bring that within the umbrella of the arbitration proceedings. And so one of the arguments we used in our brief was about the Dallas Cowboys, and there was a locker room scandal with their cheerleaders where there was some videotaping of it. And so the question is, that's a scandal that arguably affects the league. One of the questions we raised in our brief is that where someone's saying that their privacy was violated? Is that an internal league matter where these cheerleaders can't go to court and obtain redress if they have to go to the NFL arbitration proceedings, and whether that's something that can be swept under the rug? So it is something that I think every league is struggling with now, and potentially as a result of these cases rewriting arbitration agreements. I'm not sure about that, but I think it is something where leagues like to have a lot of control over certainly the game. But the question, I think, is how much control are they trying to assert over things that happen outside of the corners of the field?
Right.
Yeah, and I get the idea of the leagues having control over the game, over what happens between the white lines, how the drafts are conducted, how discipline is handed down. And I get all of the functional, competitive related categories that the league would want to have its act together in. But when these matters cross over into the legal world, like there's no other employer that I'm aware of that would be able to say, oh, no, you're not going to go to the court. We've got this all handled internally. Now, maybe there are some that I just don't know about. And Adam, you don't know David Collins very well, but David over the years has put forth the idea that the three most corrupt organizations in all of sports are FIFA, the NCAA,
and the International Olympic
one?
Committee,
and the IOC. And David, my question for you after hearing just some of this preliminary conversation is, are you anywhere close to adding a fourth member to that trio?
No, I mean, honestly, I was really intrigued with the answer that Adam just gave, because I had a question. Like, I mean, Gruden's done a pretty remarkable job of rebuilding, like, how people view him. I know, depending on what you think of Barstool and how he's interacted with that. But I guess the question for me is, if these lawsuits keep coming up and they keep bouncing against the NFL's arbitration system and rules, like, at what point can there be, a U.S. court system where they come in and go, hey, you've got to change these, you've got to rewrite this? Or is this just kind of a case-by-case basis as it continues to happen? Like is there a specific process where enough stuff comes out or enough people bump up against it that they're like, we've got to adjust this? Or again, like, is it just, hey, this happened, so let's change the wording here, let's move this here? How does that exactly go?
Well, it's definitely not confined to sports. And there's a Nevada case, and pardon me if I don't repeat the facts completely accurately, so I'll just try to paraphrase what was decided by the Nevada Supreme Court. But in general, there's such a presumption in favor of arbitration in the country because for a long time, and this is just kind of as part of legal history, for a long time, courts were reluctant to yield their authority and so kept the cases even though parties had validly agreed to go to arbitration. So Congress passed the Federal Arbitration Act to basically tell state courts they couldn't stop disputes from going to arbitration if certain prerequisites had been made, and so there was a valid contract. So that's progressed, and maybe we're at a tipping point on the other end, but it's progressed to the point where arbitration is the preferred forum for a lot of companies. And in this case in Nevada, there was a question that, to set the scene, and I'm sure you're familiar with Airbnb, there was an individual who was walking past a house in Las Vegas that was being rented out as an Airbnb, and there were Airbnb guests inside of it. And there was I believe, a fight taking place in that Airbnb. And as the individual walked past, was involved in the fight, I believe he was allegedly injured. And so he brought a suit against, the individuals and Airbnb itself. Now, regardless of the merits of that claim, about whether they could be responsible for not checking guests or, not securing the premises, Airbnb moved to compel that dispute to arbitration against the individual who was walking down the street on the basis that that individual had years prior downloaded the Airbnb app and signed up to the terms of service with Airbnb. So that's a pretty significant step that you have signed away your right to have your cases litigated in court because you've downloaded an app and agreed to arbitrate your disputes against Airbnb. And at no point when you were doing that did you think that later you could be walking past a house, have a punch thrown at you, and have signed away your ability to proceed to court. But that is the area in which these arbitration disputes are being decided, and I think that's the kind of backdrop to what's happening in the NFL cases as well, because you have companies willing to go to any lengths, like even if it strains and all kind of rational common sense that individual shouldn't go to arbitration against Airbnb. And the Nevada Supreme Court held that was referable to the arbitration panel under the terms of his agreement and terms of service with Airbnb. So it's not something that was so far-fetched that it didn't ultimately go to arbitration, because one of the principles is you may think that it's unfair, but if you've agreed to it, go to arbitration and then bring your claim back in front of the court if you don't get a fair process in the arbitration. And that's something the NFL argued too, was specifically about Brian Flores. Hey, you may think that we're biased against you and that it's not going to be a fair process, but you're still obligated to go through that process, present your case to the NFL, and then show the court after the fact why it wasn't fair to begin with.
That's really fascinating. It kind of worries me in some regard how many times I've clicked accept, the iTunes or something else. Like, what am I signing up for? Like, what rights am I essentially kind of giving up because I didn't even read through all the 900 pages of information that they send you?
Yeah, and the one thing Adam didn't indicate there, he can correct me if I'm wrong too, but back on the arbitration point again, like there's a huge arbitration company. It's AAA, the American Arbitration Association, and they have rules that govern thousands of different, hundreds of different companies. They have construction rules, they have architecture rules, they have medical rules, but it's kind of for a bad analogy, a private court system. I mean, they have rules, very definitive rules. Everybody knows it. And it's because of the Federal Arbitration Act that Adam mentioned. So, but again, here, and I'll say this, it's different in the sense that NFL didn't say, let's go to this private entity, the AAA that everybody knows and respects, even if they don't like them. We're going to keep that all in house. So that's what makes that case a little bit more unique in that sense. And the other thing that the Federal Arbitration Act says is, what Adam didn't say, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, because there could be some nuances to this, is back to the NFL using the floor as example. Well, you have to go through the process first. And then if you don't like it, you can go to court if we were unfair. But part of that problem is the arbitration process is where the facts were done, and they had a lot of testimony there. So in most instances, the court is still going to defer to the fact finding that occurred in that process and not make their own determinations. So while, yes, you can take it into court, you're still kind of behind the 8 ball when you go there, because you've already had something that's been decided that the court, for the most part, is going to say, we're not going to get back into these facts because you saw the witnesses, you made these determinations. We're just going to, based upon those facts, see if there was any legal mistakes.
So it essentially just kind of tips the weight towards what the arbitration already decided.
Yes, gotcha. At least from a factual perspective.
Okay, so in the world of a sports fan, which I would consider myself and David and Paul, Josh, Randy, there's this big picture question, and that is, okay, anyways, what does it all matter? Why should I care? And where's this thing headed? I picture, well, first of all, let's set some hierarchical definitions. Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the National Football League, but he serves at the pleasure of the owners. They are his bosses. Granted, it takes like 2/3 of them to make a decision about changing the kickoff rules and all that, but that's part of their bylaws. They have that stuff all written in, and that's fine. But they do work for him. And what I can't quite come to grips with right now is why that ownership group, full of very successful people, generally speaking, pretty intelligent people, when they banded together to oust Daniel Snyder because of a long string of very offensive behavior that he was engaging in, and they got him out. And granted, he cashed a check for, I don't know, 8 times whatever he bought the Commanders for, but they got him out, right? In the NBA, they did that to Donald Sterling. Got him out. They got a bad seed out of there. In the Gruden case, in the Flores case, and in these other cases that involve somebody not at ownership level, from afar, it almost seems as if they will blindly and consistently rally behind their commissioner. Now, maybe there are private conversations taking place that I have no idea about. Maybe they're calling him on the carpet and saying, how are you letting this get out of hand? But in the end, every bit of this conversation comes back to how will it impact the league's bottom line, subsequently the ownership group's bottom line. So in the end of all of this, and I'm not sure that Adam would be able to step into this territory, at the end of all of this, are we talking about, I'm just going to throw out a number, $130 million for Coach Gruden, that if the league cared about anything else, they might have gotten this thing done by now. I mean, it's been 4 years along the way. Is this all about the maintenance of complete control? Is it about the money? Is it about a combination of the two? And again, Adam, you're more than welcome to answer this, but I would love to hear also from David, Paul, and Josh as to where you, just from a outside standpoint, think this motivation to keep this thing going is coming from.
Well, I'm just going to go back to what I heard Adam say earlier, Bill, which is Jon Gruden still has a little fire burning inside him, right? And so I would not at all be surprised if it's like, man, I'd love to get a chance to coach again. But I mean, I don't know. Like, as a sports fan, those are just the things that I think about. Like, is he going to ever be allowed to, to coach a team again? And I'm a big fan of the NFL, so I really kind of don't. Actually, maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I don't want the league to get hurt by this as a sports fan. I want to be able to continue to watch my Chicago Bears lose every weekend, but
not last night. But those are the things that I wonder about, right?
I loved watching Gruden coach. I hope he gets. I just hope he gets a chance to coach again. That's kind of where it exists for me.
There may be a gig at North Carolina coming open soon.
Perhaps Ann Arbor would like him as well.
All right, there's possibilities out there. Josh Gilmer, when you think about this in terms of the NFL and its perception and leadership, what thoughts do you have as the younger member of this conversation?
Well, I'm not going to actually directly answer your question because I'm just still thinking about this whole Airbnb thing. And I'm debating on if I'm ever going to find myself purchasing my own Sunday ticket because I don't want to have to deal with some Goodell arbitration next time something crazy goes down. So, yeah. But no, similar to Paul, I do think like I don't want to see the league hurt, but I am very big on the truth and justice, and I wanna know what's going on. So that's more important to me.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I mean, I think this ultimately comes down to control more than anything. I mean, obviously the money is the reason the billionaires are in this business, et cetera. You know, every single stadium and team, the values go way up. But I think it's similar to like what you saw recently with the NCAA trying to regain control of what's going on there. I think that the people in charge want to stay in charge because there's only 32 of them in the NFL, and they're all part of a big club together. And when one gets ousted, another one gets to jump in, and they're very careful about who they allow in this because they are looking for like-minded people to continue a system the way that they've always done it. Bob Kraft and Jerry Jones relatively, they kind of run that league. And I think that ultimately the main thing is control, but control ultimately is driven by money. So, I mean, it's kind of a big snake eating its tail.
Randy, where do you think it's going?
Well, I mean, I think that it is control. I mean, I guess I'm looking at it both from and I agree with what everybody said, and I want to see the truth come out, as Joshua indicated, regardless of where the chips might fall on that. But I'm just looking back from the procedural standpoint about, I think you started it off by saying, why haven't they just thrown a bunch of money at this or whatever? And I do think the control is part of it. But the one thing is, as we talked about, is this case, while it has been on for a very long time, is very much in its infancy, as Adam was trying to point out, because this has all been fighting about whether or not it has to go to arbitration or not. So I think for me, looking at it from the outside, I don't think they're not at a place where I don't think where anybody would want to say, yeah, we just want to go away. I think what Paul said about, Coach Gruden and, and the other people, the owners that David indicated, these are all very competitive people who, want to see a win at some point for their side. But it really is, despite how long it's been going on, so early in its infancy. I think for a lot of people, that's hard to see what that W looks like, especially on the NFL side of things. Obviously, we know what Jon Gruden wants from the complaint and some of his public statements, but from the league, they haven't really had to say anything yet because it's all been fighting about this motion to compel arbitration piece. So
quick question, quick answer, Randy. If you had to just guess, how many more years is this thing going? When does it wrap up?
Oh, well, I mean, if it goes back to the district court, then they're finally going to have to file an answer, and then they'll have discovery and the league and.
No, the quick answer. Remember the quick question,
Yeah.
quick answer?
4 years. There you go.
Really?
There's my guess.
Well, Adam, you have been so kind with your time. What I'd like to do is just kind of a rapid fire, just one more lap around the panel here to throw one last question at you. And you can take as much time as you'd like, but we'll be brief and then we'll let you get out of here. So, David Collins, you have a last question for Adam.
Yeah, does Jon Gruden have a strong handshake? How is that? I mean, is he a high five guy? What's going on there?
Terrifyingly strong handshake.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Terrifyingly strong.
Get to the bottom of the important things.
My last question for you, Adam, is: has he expressed to you a desire to coach again?
So all I can say is his public comments where he's expressed publicly a desire to coach again.
Okay, good. Paul.
Yeah. So Adam, this is Church Pew Sports, right? So my question, this is probably a little bit of a loaded question. I don't know, but I'm wondering, like, set the particulars of the case aside. Are there any like life lessons that we can all learn from this whole conversation that's been brewing here from your perspective? Like, if you had advice to give to our listeners about we're trying to connect sports to life. Is there anything here that we can all learn from, regardless of the outcome of the case and all that stuff?
So have you seen the Kingdom, the Hulu series on the Chiefs?
Yes.
There's an episode there about Andy Reid where he has a postcard that says "Don't judge," and that's just something I've tried to keep in my heart too, which is, don't judge the people that you read about, don't judge the people that you're interacting with every day, and certainly always try to put yourself in everyone else's shoes. But I think "Don't judge" is such a powerful message from that show, and speaks volumes about Coach Reid as well.
That's good.
He may
Josh
just give
Gilmer?
us a 3-minute message.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have a final question for Adam?
No, it's more just of a personal request. Next time you talk to John, if you could let him know that he has a friend in Durham that would really like to meet Dave Portnoy. If that could ever end up happening, that's all I got.
That was an abuse of your moment on this program, young man. Randy, do you have any questions for Adam?
No. Thanks so much for coming, Adam. I appreciate it. It was
That's
great
awesome.
to have you.
Thank you.
Seeing this content.
Yeah, really
Thank you all so
appreciate
much. Absolutely. Thank you. I'll talk to you all in about 4 years.
We will move from this episode of LA Law into our Holy Discontent.
It's time to blow off some steam. Get it off your chest. Rant about what's most bothering you.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now you're going to hear about it.
It's time for Holy Discontent.
Randy Gilmer, what's irritating you? Lead us off.
Oh, what is irritating me in the world of sports these days? I don't know.
This should not be difficult.
3 losses in a row for my 3 favorite teams, I guess, would be my holy discontent. I'm not sure I can blame anybody but the teams, but.
All right, Josh Gilmer, anything in your holy discontent?
Mine was going to be pretty similar to that. I would say the next thing that I could think of is I want to know what's going on with this Scooble contract and when it's going to officially not happen. But that's what's getting me at the moment.
David Collins, I have a feeling you're heading in that similar direction.
Hey, it's a lot of things. I mean, I could talk for about 40 minutes right now about what's bothering me in the world of sports. But by the way, Randy, I don't know if you listened to, I don't know if it was last episode or a couple episodes ago. Bill asked me specifically, got the Tigers Friday night, Michigan Saturday night, and Detroit Sunday night. How do you think this goes? And I said, we're going 0-3. And I was correct. And I'm sad that I was correct, but I call it how I see it. And I saw it coming, and it happened exactly like I said it. If I'm going to give my holy discontent, I'm just going to say the name Scott Harris. Okay? You just saw what Seattle did with getting Naylor and Suarez at the deadline, 2 bats. You didn't get a single bat. And now you're sitting there saying, I'm going to take responsibility. Oh, I see what happened in September. And yeah, you know who had a chance to stop what happened in September? Scott. You did. You did. And now we're sitting here and we're talking about Tarek Skubal. And I've seen mixed things. Some things say, oh, Illich said that that we're going to have the resources to get it. And then I also listened to Scott Harris's interview the other day where he's like, I can't comment on our players or who's getting traded or who we're signing or other team's player. I'm going to leave it at that. Scott, you listen to me. Look me in the eye, Scott. You sign Tarek Skubal, or you make a competitive offer, and if he chooses elsewhere, then that's fine. But do not come up short. Do not. And get some bats. That's all. I could keep going.
Oh, by the way, in Scott Harris's season-ending press conference, when asked specifically about trade deadline acquisitions, he said, we considered these things carefully, but any player we were looking to go and get performed worse than the player we kept in the postseason. And I don't even know what that means, but there's no way that the player performed worse.
So you're telling me he looked at Chris Paddock and said, this is a thing that we need? That he looked at 41-year-old Charlie Morton and said, this is a thing we need? I'm 41. I know I can't throw a baseball. And guess what? Neither can Charlie Morton. And we didn't get any I'll stop.
In a 15-inning game, which of those guys pitched? Neither. Thank you. My holy discontent needs a preface to it. the Kansas City Chiefs soundly defeated the Detroit Lions. They beat them. They were good. They showed what they needed to show because they were a team kind of on the ropes. And they, on Sunday Night Football, performed when they needed to. There's my disclaimer. My holy discontent, it's just laughable. It's comical. The NFL officiating bias in favor of the Chiefs is silly. It did not change the outcome of the game. But all I will offer, I should get Adam back on here. I will offer as Exhibit A, Your Honor, the touchdown catch that Sam Laporta did make with one hand in the back of the end zone. And as Chris Collinsworth probably accidentally pointed out, because he does not like to criticize the Chiefs, the reason that Laporta made the catch with one hand is because, as Chris said, his right hand was being pulled away from his body. There was no yellow flag thrown there. And all throughout, by the way, that entire evening, no penalties on the Chiefs. None. They played the NFL's second perfect game of all time. Congratulations to the Chiefs. That is one impressive performance to commit absolutely no penalties, including those that we have very vivid visual evidence of. So that's my holy discontent.
And to get a penalty called a minute and a half after a touchdown was scored that also didn't have a flag.
You mean a non-reviewable play? Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
I was going to say, I think you reminded me that my real holy discontent was having to listen to Collinsworth in a Chiefs game. I think that was torture that no man deserves.
It's painful. It's Doris Burke calling NBA Finals painful. It's really, really rough.
Yeah. Well, and hearing David talk, my holy discontent, I could be the minority here, but if Tarek Skubal really told AJ, I'm not going back out for the 7th, if that's really how that went down, I hope a lot of general managers aren't paying that man $40 million. That's all I got to say.
Maybe it needs to go to Discovery.
They're all mic'd up, so maybe it does. All right, Paul. Sorry to take so long to get to you. We're all a little frustrated. So
yeah, I don't know if there's much oxygen left for my holy discontent, though I will say coming into this conversation, it was going to be with Patrick Mahomes and his incredulous reaction to one of the Lions players, like breathing on him and getting a roughing the passer call. I just remembered him being like, "What? You touched me? What?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. I can't handle that." But after this conversation tonight, I have changed my holy discontent. I thought I liked lawyers. And then Randy and Adam both said to us, yeah, we got like 4 years to wait until we get to the end of this thing.
Yeah.
What's up with that? Can you guys make a decision and get it moving on? I'm not interested in waiting around for 4 years for Jon Gruden to coach again. That just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, well, Randy, that's on you.
Well, like I said, maybe John can come to Ann Arbor. He can coach and still fight with the NFL.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Homer, I'd like you to remember Matthew 7:26. The foolish man who built his house on sand.
And you remember Matthew 21:17.
And he left them and went out of the city into Bethany, and he lodged there?
Yeah. Think about it.
Paul, do you want to wrap us up with a bit of a 3-minute message today?
Yeah, I think, I was really glad to hear Adam talk about the don't judge piece. That was a great answer when I asked him if there are any life lessons that we can learn from this thing. I think there's another one that we can take from this entire conversation about Jon Gruden and Roger Goodell and the whole thing. And it just comes straight from Luke 12. And the basic lesson here is be the same person in private as you are in public. Luke 12 verses 2 and 3 says, "There's nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the rooftops." So I'm not quoting that verse and saying anything about what I think did or didn't happen in the case. I just think we can learn from the entire narrative that if the words that we're saying and the things that we're doing and the opinions that we're sharing are not things that we would be comfortable having them out in public, we shouldn't be doing them because they're going to be revealed someday before our ultimate judge, right? So be the same person in private as you are in public. And I just think that's the obvious application of this whole story, because at the end of the day, that everyone related to the Gruden lawsuit against the NFL, their reputation gets dinged a little bit through this thing, regardless of how the case ends. But integrity and consistency of character is what we should be subscribing or aspiring to, and trying to move toward as best we can. So I think that's our 3-minute message for this
Well
week.
said. Well, Randy, thank you for connecting us with Adam. I found the whole thing to be quite interesting. Hopefully all of you listening did as well. It's kind of a diversion for us. Normally, Paul and I will get together and pick out a topic that's pulled right from this week's headlines. This one is going to be a story, apparently, for the rest of our natural-born lives. But it's interesting to look at the behind-the-scenes kind of machinations of how a league operates and how the legal system operates. So I appreciate you all coming in and being part of it. And we will look forward to connecting with you again next week on Church Pew Sports. Don't forget, check us out at churchpewsports.com and follow us on Facebook and X. Thanks, boys. We'll see you all next time.